The wind screamed like a banshee across the Montana territory as Zara Parker huddled beneath her threadbare quilt, praying the rickety cabin walls would hold against nature's fury. It was 1876, the harshest winter anyone in Coloma could remember, and her third month alone since her father's passing left her with nothing but a struggling homestead and mounting debts. The fireplace embers had dimmed to a dull orange glow, providing little warmth against the biting cold that seeped through every crack in the timber. A thunderous knocking suddenly competed with the howling gale, causing Zara to bolt upright, her heart hammering in her chest. No one in their right mind would be out in such weather. Clutching her father's old shotgun, she approached the door cautiously, her bare feet numb against the icy floorboards. "Who's there?" she called, struggling to be heard over the wind's wailing. "Name's Nathan Prescott, madam. My horse threw a shoe about a mile back. I need shelter until this storm passes," came a deep, wind-roughened voice. Zara hesitated. A stranger in the night was dangerous, but leaving anyone to the merciless elements was a death sentence she couldn't deliver. With trembling fingers, she unlatched the door, immediately fighting against the force of the wind to keep it from slamming open. A tall figure entered, bringing with him swirls of snow and the scent of leather and horse. When he removed his snow-crusted hat, Zara found herself looking into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-weathered face framed by dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. "Obliged, madam," he said, stomping snow from his boots before carefully closing the door against the tempest outside. His gaze fell on the shotgun still gripped in her hands. "I mean no harm, just need a place until morning." Zara lowered the gun slightly but kept her finger near the trigger. "You can warm yourself by the fire, Mr. Prescott, but I'll be keeping this with me." A half-smile touched his lips. "Wise decision. A woman alone has every right to be cautious." He surveyed the cabin with a practiced eye. "Your fire's dying. Mind if I tend to it?" Before she could answer, he was already moving toward the hearth, his movements efficient as he added logs from the dwindling pile and stoked the flames until they roared to life again. The sudden warmth made Zara realize how cold she'd been. "Been a while since anyone's kept up this place properly," he commented, his tone matter-of-fact rather than judgmental as he eyed the leaking roof corner and the poorly patched window. "My father died in September," Zara replied defensively. "I've been doing my best." Nathan's expression softened. "No offense intended, Miss Parker, Zara Parker, Miss Parker." He nodded respectfully. "I've buried family myself, know how it leaves holes in more than just your heart." Something in his straightforward sympathy disarmed her more than pretty words might have. Zara placed the shotgun in the corner, though still within reach. "There's coffee in the pot if you'd like to warm up properly." "That's mighty kind." He removed his heavy coat, revealing broad shoulders under a worn flannel shirt. A gun belt hung at his hip, but he unbuckled it and set it aside in a gesture Zara recognized as one of respect. As she moved to retrieve a cup, a violent gust rattled the entire structure. The cabin groaned ominously, and a section of the roof near the far wall suddenly gave way under the weight of accumulated snow. The freezing deluge poured in, instantly soaking her bed. Zara cried out in dismay, rushing toward the disaster, but Nathan was faster. "Stay back," he warned, already grabbing a sheet of tin that had been propped against the wall, her failed attempt at her repair weeks earlier. With remarkable strength, he hoisted it up, using the broken table leg she'd been saving for firewood to brace it against the gap. "It won't hold for long," he said grimly, "but it'll keep the worst of it out tonight." Zara stared at her snow-covered bed in despair. "All my blankets." Nathan assessed the situation quickly. "The floor by the fire will be warmest anyway. I'll sleep there. You can take my coat for extra cover." "I can't take your coat," she protested. "You can and will," he said firmly, though not unkindly. "I've weathered worse in my bedroll." Another howl of wind sent shivers down the cabin walls. Snow continued to find its way through small gaps in Nathan's makeshift repair, dotting the floor with wet patches that gleamed in the firelight. Zara hugged herself, suddenly overwhelmed by the precariousness of her situation alone, with a failing homestead, now a partially collapsed roof, and a stranger in her home. Nathan must have read something in her expression because his voice softened. "The wind's not letting up tonight, Miss Parker. Your walls are holding, but barely." He gestured to the spot nearest the fire. "You'll rest against me tonight. Body heat's the difference between surviving and freezing when the mercury drops this low." She stiffened at the suggestion. "Mr. Prescott, I hardly know you." "I'm not proposing marriage," he replied with a hint of dry humor. "Just survival. I'll keep my hands to myself and my back to the fire. You have my word as a man who was raised right." Zara wavered, propriety warring with practicality. The cold was already seeping deeper into the cabin, and the fire, though revived, couldn't compete with the bitter Montana night. "I suppose necessity overrules convention tonight," she finally conceded. Nathan nodded, all business now. "Let's build up the fire as much as we can first." Together they arranged the remaining firewood, creating a blaze that pushed back the darkness and cold. Nathan laid his bedroll on the floor, then added his coat on top. "Ladies first," he said, gesturing to the makeshift bed. Zara hesitated only briefly before lying down, her back to the fire. A moment later, she felt Nathan's solid presence behind her, a respectful few inches separating them. "Try to sleep," he advised. Storm might pass by morning, but sleep eluded Zara as the wind continued its assault. Despite the roaring fire, cold drafts still found their way to her. She shivered uncontrollably. After several minutes of this, Nathan spoke quietly. "Miss Parker, you're freezing. Permission to move closer." Propriety be damned, Zara thought. She was too cold to care anymore. "Yes," she whispered. He shifted, closing the gap between them, his chest against her back, his arm cautiously coming around her waist over the blankets. The immediate warmth was undeniable, and Zara found herself relaxing into the shelter of his body. "Thank you," she murmured. "Just doing what anyone would," he replied, his breath warming the back of her neck. But as Zara drifted towards sleep, feeling secure for the first time in months, she couldn't help thinking that Nathan Prescott wasn't just anyone. The morning light filtered through the cracks in the cabin walls, revealing the aftermath of the storm. Zara awakened slowly, aware of unfamiliar warmth at her back and the steady rhythm of someone else's breathing. For a moment, she remained still, recollecting the events of the previous night. She carefully extricated herself from Nathan's protective embrace, noting how even in sleep he had maintained a respectful position. He stirred as she moved, his eyes opening immediately, alert despite the early hour. "Morning," he said simply, sitting up and running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Storm's past." "Yes," Zara agreed, suddenly self-conscious in the daylight. She busied herself rekindling the fire from the remaining embers. "I should thank you for your help last night." Nathan stood, stretching his tall frame. "No thanks needed." He moved to examine the makeshift roof repair in the harsh light of day. "This won't hold for long. Another storm comes through, you'll lose the whole roof." "I know," Zara admitted, the weight of her situation settling back on her shoulders. "But I haven't the money for proper repairs, nor the skill to do it myself." Nathan considered this as he pulled on his boots. "I could help if you'd allow it. I've built my share of structures over the years." Zara's pride warred with practicality. "I couldn't impose further. You've already been kind enough." "It's not an imposition if I'm offering," he countered. "Besides, I'm between jobs at the moment. Was heading to the silver mines in Virginia City, but they'll still be there next week." Before Zara could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. She opened it to find Sheriff Trent, his expression grim beneath his frosted mustache. "Morning, Miss Parker," he said, tipping his hat before his gaze settled on Nathan with obvious suspicion. "Didn't realize you had company." "Mr. Prescott was caught in the storm last night and needed shelter," Zara explained quickly. "Sheriff Trent, this is Nathan Prescott." The men exchanged nods, sizing each other up. "What brings you by, Sheriff?" Zara asked, sensing tension. "Wellness check after the storm," he replied, though his eyes remained on Nathan. "And to remind you that Mr. Hollister will be coming by today about purchasing your property. Said he sent you several letters." Zara's stomach nodded. "I've received his letters." "My answer remains the same. The Parker homestead is not for sale," the sheriff sighed. "Miss Parker, Vincent Hollister isn't a man accustomed to hearing no. He's bought up most of the valley already. Might be wise to consider his offer before it expires." "Is that a friendly suggestion or an official warning, Sheriff?" Nathan asked, his tone deceptively casual as he moved to stand beside Zara. Sheriff Trent bristled. "Just looking out for a young woman's best interests. These mountains are no place for someone alone." He touched the brim of his hat. "I'll let Mr. Hollister know you'll receive him then." After the sheriff departed, Zara released a shaky breath. "Vincent Hollister owns the largest cattle operation in the territory. He's been trying to buy our land since before Father died." "And you don't want to sell?" Nathan asked. Zara shook her head firmly. "This land was my parents' dream. Mother is buried on that ridge." She pointed through the window to a distant slope. "Father worked himself to death clearing these fields. I can't just hand it over to become part of Hollister's empire." Nathan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then you shouldn't have to." He gestured to the damaged roof. "Tell you what, let me fix this for you. In exchange, I'd appreciate meals and a corner to sleep in while I work. After that, I'll be on my way and you can face Hollister on more solid footing." Zara studied him, weighing her options. Something about Nathan Prescott inspired trust despite his mysterious appearance. More practically, her roof needed immediate attention. "Very well, Mr. Prescott, you have a deal." Nathan's answering smile transformed his weathered face. "Call me Nathan." "If I'm staying a while, we might as well dispense with formalities." True to his word, Nathan set to work immediately, assessing the damage and compiling a list of needed materials. Zara watched in amazement as he expertly took measurements, his movements confident and practiced. "You seem to know what you're doing," she observed. "Built my first cabin when I was 17, he replied without looking up from his work. "My father believed a man should know how to create shelter with his own hands." "Your father sounds wise." "He was." A shadow crossed Nathan's face. "Until gold fever took him to California in '49, never saw him again." Zara felt an unexpected connection in their shared loss. "I'm sorry," Nathan shrugged, but his eyes held appreciation for her sympathy. "It was a long time ago. I learned to make my own way. As a cowboy." Zara asked, curiosity getting the better of her, among other things. Drove cattle from Texas to Kansas, scouted for the Army for a spell, did some mining in Colorado. He finally looked up, a wry smile touching his lips. "Never quite found my place." "And now you're heading to Virginia City," Zara noted. "That was the plan," he agreed, returning to his measurements. "But plans change." By midday, Nathan had compiled his list and was preparing to ride into town for supplies. Zara handed him a carefully counted sum from her meager savings. "It's not much," she apologized. "It'll be enough for the essentials," he assured her. "I can be resourceful when needed." As Nathan mounted his horse, a fine chestnut gelding that had thankfully returned during the night, Zara watched him with a mixture of hope and trepidation. There was no guarantee he would return once he reached town. "I'll be back before sundown," he promised, as if reading her thoughts. True to his word, Nathan returned as the afternoon shadows lengthened, his horse laden with lumber, tools, and additional supplies. Zara's relief at his return surprised her. "Found some good deals," he explained as he unloaded. "And the mercantile owner extended credit when I mentioned it was for the Parker place. Seems your father was well respected." "He was," Zara confirmed, touched by the community's lingering goodwill toward her family. "Though that respect hasn't deterred Vincent Hollister's ambitions." As if summoned by his name, the sound of approaching hoofbeats announced visitors. 3 riders appeared, Vincent Hollister himself, flanked by his foreman and Sheriff Trent. Hollister was an imposing figure, expensively dressed despite the rugged terrain, with a silver-streaked beard and cold eyes that assessed everything in terms of value. He dismounted with practiced ease, approaching Zara with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. "Miss Parker," he greeted, removing his hat, "I see you've enlisted help with your modest accommodations." "Mr. Hollister," Zara acknowledged stiffly. "As I've written in response to your letters, the Parker homestead is not for sale." Hollister's smile never reached his eyes. "Perhaps we should discuss this inside where it's more comfortable." "We can talk here," Nathan interjected, stepping forward. Miss Parker's made her position clear. Hollister's gaze shifted to Nathan, taking in his worn clothes and capable stance. "And you are Nathan Prescott, friend of the family? Interesting. I wasn't aware the Parkers had extended family in the territory." Hollister's tone suggested he didn't believe the claim. "We don't," Zara confirmed. "Mr. Prescott is helping with repairs." Hollister nodded slowly. "Admirable, however, it seems a considerable investment for a property with such limited potential." He removed an envelope from his coat. "I've taken the liberty of increasing my offer, Miss Parker." "I think you'll find it more than fair." Zara accepted the envelope but didn't open it. "My decision isn't about the money, Mr. Hollister." "Everything is about money eventually, my dear," Hollister replied, his patronizing tone grating on Zara's nerves, "especially when winter returns. Or when taxes come due." He glanced meaningfully at the cabin's damaged roof. "Sentiment doesn't keep a roof over one's head." "Thank you for your concern," Zara said firmly, "but this land stays in Parker hands." Hollister's expression hardened slightly. "I admire your spirit, Miss Parker. But business is business. My offer remains open for 1 week. After that," he shrugged eloquently, "the bank may have other ideas about your mortgage." Zara felt her heart sink. How did he know about the mortgage? As if reading her mind, Hollister added, "Small communities have few secrets, Miss Parker. Good day to you." He turned to leave, then paused beside Nathan. "A word of advice, Prescott. The Parker situation is a local matter. Outsiders who interfere tend to find Montana unwelcoming." Nathan met his gaze steadily. "I appreciate the concern, but I've always found that people make their own welcome, regardless of geography." The standoff lasted only seconds before Hollister nodded curtly and returned to his horse. The 3 men rode away, leaving a cloud of dust and unease in their wake. "He knows about the mortgage," Zara said quietly once they were alone. "Father borrowed against the property last year when the crops failed. I've been trying to make payments, but—" "Men like Hollister make it their business to know where people are vulnerable," Nathan replied, his expression grim. "How much time do you have?" 3 months until the next payment. I was hoping to sell enough at the spring market to cover it." Zara gestured helplessly at the damaged cabin. "But with repairs needed," Nathan considered this information. "Let's focus on one problem at a time. First, we get your roof secure, then we figure out the rest." The days that followed fell into an unexpectedly comfortable rhythm. Nathan worked tirelessly on the cabin repairs, demonstrating a craftsmanship that impressed Zara. She, in turn, kept them fed with simple but hearty meals from her dwindling stores, supplemented by Nathan's surprising skill with a hunting rifle. They talked as they worked, sharing stories of their lives. Zara learned that Nathan had fought briefly in the war between the states, had driven cattle on the Kishome Trail, and had once spent a winter trapped in a mountain cabin with an old trapper who taught him to speak passable Crow. In turn, she told him about growing up as the only child of determined homesteaders, about her mother's death from fever when Zara was 15, and her father's subsequent decline as he pushed himself too hard trying to maintain their dream alone. "He never recovered from losing her," Zara explained as they sat by the fire one evening, the roof now securely repaired above them. "It was as if half his strength went with her." "Some bonds are like that," Nathan observed, his voice soft in the firelight. "They become the foundation of who you are when they're broken." "You have to build something new," Zara finished for him, but he couldn't. Nathan studied her across the flames. "And you, what foundation are you building for yourself out here?" The question caught Zara off guard. "I'm just trying to honor their memory, their sacrifice." "Is that enough to sustain you?" No one had asked her that before. The townspeople had either pitied her or expected her to sell and move on. Nathan was the first to question the purpose behind her determination. "I don't know," she admitted honestly, "but I'm not ready to give up on what they started." Nathan nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Fair enough. Just make sure you're building a life you want, not just preserving one that's past." His words stayed with Zara as she lay awake that night. Nathan continued to sleep near the fire, maintaining a respectful distance since that first storm-tossed night, though sometimes she found herself wishing for the security of his presence beside her again. The attraction building between them was undeniable, though neither had acknowledged it openly. Zara caught him watching her sometimes with an intensity that made her breath catch. For his part, Nathan remained unfailingly respectful, though the gentle brush of his hand against hers when passing tools seemed to linger longer than necessary. With the roof repaired, Nathan turned his attention to the cabin's other deficiencies, reinforcing walls, fixing the sagging porch, replacing the broken window. Each improvement made the humble structure more secure, more like the home her parents had envisioned. One afternoon, as Zara returned from collecting eggs from her few remaining hens, she found Nathan examining her father's failed attempt at an irrigation system for the western field. "Your father had the right idea," he commented as she approached, "but his channel's too steep here. Water would run too fast, erode the soil." "Can it be fixed?" Zara asked, setting down her basket. "With enough hands, yes." Nathan surveyed the expanse of the field. "Properly irrigated, this land could support twice what you're growing now." "Father always said this valley had potential others couldn't see," Zara replied, a spark of hope kindling within her. "But Hollister only values it for grazing his cattle." "Men like Hollister see land as something to own, not nurture," Nathan observed. "Your father understood the difference." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of two riders, Liam Cooper, who owned the neighboring farm to the east, and his daughter Eliza, who had been Zara's friend since childhood. "Zara," Eliza called cheerfully, dismounting with practiced ease. "We brought you some preserves Mother put up last fall," and she stopped short upon noticing Nathan. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company." Zara made the introductions, noting the appraising look Eliza gave Nathan. Her friend had always been more worldly, having spent 2 years at a ladies' school in Denver before returning to help her family. "Mr. Prescott has been helping with repairs," Zara explained. "And doing a fine job from what I can see," Liam commented, examining the improvements. "Roof looks solid. Just in time, too," Eliza added. "There's word of another storm coming through next week." After some pleasant conversation, Eliza pulled Zara aside while the men discussed the irrigation possibilities. "He's handsome," Eliza whispered, her eyes twinkling, "and clearly capable." "Where did you find him?" "He found me during the last storm," Zara admitted. "He's just passing through, helping in exchange for room and board." Eliza raised a skeptical eyebrow. "A man doesn't put that much effort into repairs for a stranger unless he's got other interests. And the way he looks at you when you're not watching." "Eliza," Zara felt heat rising to her cheeks. "Just stating facts," her friend replied with a grin, "but be careful. Hollister's been asking questions about your mysterious helper in town." This sobered Zara immediately. "What kind of questions? Where he came from, if he has a history with the law?" Eliza frowned. "Father thinks Hollister sees him as an obstacle to getting your land." Zara glanced at Nathan, now engaged in animated conversation with Liam about crop rotation. There was something about his presence that made her feel both safer and more vulnerable simultaneously. "He's only staying until the repairs are done," Zara said, as much to convince herself as Eliza. "Then he's continuing to Virginia City." "If you say so," Eliza replied, clearly unconvinced. "Just," Be careful with your heart, Zara. The territory is full of men who make promises they don't keep. After the Coopers departed, Nathan continued working on the irrigation assessment, mapping out potential improvements with a stick in the dirt. Zara watched him, Eliza's words echoing in her mind. "Your neighbors seem like good people," Nathan commented. "They are," Zara agreed. "They've been kind since father died. Liam's helped with the heavy work when he could spare time from his own farm." Nathan nodded. "Good to have allies in this country." He hesitated, then added, "Eliza seemed concerned about something when you were talking." Zara considered deflecting but decided honesty was better. "Hollister's been asking questions about you in town. She thinks he sees you as a complication to his plans for my land." Nathan's expression darkened. "I figured as much. Men like him don't appreciate unexpected variables." He straightened, brushing dirt from his hands. "Maybe it's time I paid a visit to town myself. Set the record straight about who I am." "Is there something to set straight?" Zara asked carefully, realizing how little she actually knew about him beyond the stories he'd shared. Nathan met her gaze directly. "Nothing that should concern you. I've had my share of troubles, but I've never broken a law that deserved keeping." He smiled slightly. "Though I've bent a few that needed bending." "That's not entirely reassuring," Zara observed dryly. "Wasn't meant to be." Nathan's smile faded. "Truth is, Zara, most folks have parts of their past they'd rather not discuss in polite company. I'm no different." His expression grew serious. "But I promise you this: nothing in my history will bring harm to you or your home." The sincerity in his voice convinced her more than his actual words. Zara nodded slowly. "I believe you." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Then Nathan cleared his throat and returned to his irrigation diagram. "If we divert water here," he continued, pointing to the sketch, "and create a gentle grade down to the western field." That evening, as they finished a simple supper of rabbit stew, Nathan announced his intention to ride into town the following morning. "We need more supplies if we're going to start on the irrigation work," he explained. "And I should see what Hollister's been saying about me." "I could come with you," Zara offered. Nathan shook his head. "Better if I go alone this time. Some conversations are more productive without an audience." Zara wanted to argue but recognized the determined set of his jaw. Instead, she handed him a list of needed household items and what remained of her money. "Get what you can," she said. "The rest can wait." Nathan pocketed the list but returned the money. "I've got funds of my own. Save yours for when it's needed more." "You've already done so much," Zara protested. "I can't keep accepting your help without giving something in return." "You've given me a place to stay, meals, and purpose," Nathan replied simply. "That's more than fair exchange." The following morning, Zara watched Nathan ride toward town with a mixture of anticipation and unease. His absence left the homestead feeling strangely empty despite the years she'd spent there alone before his arrival. To distract herself, Zara tackled the spring cleaning she'd been postponing, scrubbing floors and washing windows until the small cabin gleamed. She was hanging laundry on the line when the sound of approaching horses caught her attention. Expecting Nathan's return, she was dismayed to see Hollister's foreman, Jensen, accompanied by 2 ranch hands. All 3 men wore expressions that immediately put Zara on guard. "Miss Parker," Jensen called, touching the brim of his hat with mock politeness. "Mr. Hollister sent us to check on your livestock situation." Zara stepped away from the clothesline, placing herself between the men and the small barn where her few animals were housed. "My livestock isn't Mr. Hollister's concern." Jensen dismounted, his movements deliberately slow. "Well now, he's worried about diseased animals contaminating the healthy stock in the valley. As the largest rancher hereabouts, he has responsibilities to the community." "My animals are perfectly healthy," Zara stated firmly, though her heart hammered in her chest. "Sheriff Trent inspected them himself last month." "That's so." Jensen's smile never reached his cold eyes. Well, we've had reports of sickness since then. Won't take but a minute to check. As he moved toward the barn, Zara stepped into his path. You have no right to be on this property, Mr. Jensen. Please leave. Jensen's expression hardened. Don't make this difficult, Miss Parker. Mr. Hollister's trying to be neighborly. Neighborly would be respecting property boundaries, came a familiar voice from behind them. Nathan had returned, his expression thunderous as he dismounted and strode toward the confrontation. Is there a problem here? Relief flooded through Zara at his appearance. Jensen's men shifted uneasily in their saddles. No problem, Jensen replied, though his stance remained aggressive. Just doing our duty to the community, checking for diseased stock. Interesting timing, Nathan observed coldly. Especially since I just overheard in town that Hollister's been spreading rumors about sick animals on the Parker place. He moved to stand beside Zara. Convenient excuse to trespass, wouldn't you say? Jensen's jaw tightened. You're out of your depth, Prescott. This territory runs on certain understandings. I understand perfectly, Nathan replied, his hand resting casually near his holstered gun. I understand that 3 men intimidating a woman alone crosses a line in any territory. The tension crackled between them until Jensen finally shrugged with exaggerated nonchalance. No need to get worked up, we'll be on our way. He remounted his horse. But Mr. Hollister will be disappointed to hear about your unwillingness to cooperate with community health concerns. Give Mr. Hollister my regards, Nathan said evenly. And a message the Parker homestead isn't unprotected anymore. Once the men had ridden away, Zara released a shaky breath. Thank you. Your timing was fortunate, not fortune. I had a feeling something might happen when I heard what Hollister was saying in town. Nathan's expression was grim. He's escalating, Zara, testing boundaries. What else was he saying? Nathan hesitated. Nothing worth repeating, but it's clear he's not giving up on acquiring your land. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Nathan shared what he'd learned in town. Hollister had apparently been spreading 2 narratives, one about diseased livestock on the Parker place, and another suggesting that Zara's vagrant helper had a criminal past. He's trying to isolate you, Nathan explained. Make the community question your judgment and my character. Did anyone believe him? Zara asked, dreading the answer. Some did. Others were more skeptical. Nathan poked at the fire. The Coopers defended you vigorously. And the blacksmith Davis spoke up for me, said any man who could shoe a horse as well as I did yesterday couldn't be all bad. Despite the serious situation, Zara smiled at this. High praise from Davis. He rarely compliments anyone's work. Small victories, Nathan agreed with a slight smile. But Hollister has influence. Money talks in every territory. Zara stared into the flames, conflicted. Maybe I should consider his offer. The amount he's proposing would let me start fresh somewhere else. Is that what you want? Nathan asked quietly. No, Zara admitted. But I'm tired of fighting, of being afraid. Nathan studied her across the fire, his expression unreadable. Fear is a poor basis for decisions, Zara. So is weariness. He leaned forward. What does your heart tell you about this land? The question resonated deeply. Zara thought about her parents, about the years of labor they'd invested, about the dreams they'd shared around this very hearth. That it's worth fighting for, she whispered finally, that it's home. Nathan nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. Then we fight. The following weeks brought a transformation to the Parker homestead. With single-minded determination, Nathan implemented his irrigation plan, enlisting help from Liam Cooper and 2 other neighboring farmers who had their own reasons to resist Hollister's expansion. Together, they dug channels, built a small dam to control water flow from the stream that bordered the property, and prepared the western field for planting. It was backbreaking work, but as the irrigation system took shape, even the skeptics had to admit its potential. Zara worked alongside them, her hands blistering then callousing as she hauled rocks and packed earth. In the evenings, she fell into exhausted sleep, but it was a satisfying exhaustion, the kind that came from progress rather than mere survival. Through it all, Her relationship with Nathan deepened in ways that went beyond words. They developed an easy synchronicity, anticipating each other's needs, communicating through glances and small gestures. The attraction between them remained unspoken but grew more undeniable with each passing day. The townsfolk began to take notice of the improvements at the Parker place. Some came to observe the irrigation system, asking questions and considering how similar methods might benefit their own properties. Others brought small gift seeds for planting, preserves, fresh-bred quiet gestures of support against Hollister's increasing pressure. Not everyone was supportive, however. Sheriff Trent made several visits, each time with a different concern that needed addressing a complaint about water rights from an unnamed neighbor, questions about Nathan's continued presence, warnings about troublemakers disrupting the valley's peace. "He's Hollister's man," Liam observed after one such visit. "Has been since Hollister paid for his election campaign last year." "Not everyone can be bought," Nathan replied, though his tone suggested he had his doubts about the sheriff. The confrontation they had been expecting came on a warm spring day as they completed the final section of the irrigation channel. Hollister himself arrived, accompanied by Jensen, Sheriff Trent, and 4 ranch hands. The group watched from horseback as Nathan demonstrated the water flow control to an admiring Liam Cooper. "Quite the engineering project," Hollister called, his voice carrying across the field. "Impressive for a temporary arrangement." Nathan straightened slowly, wiping mud from his hands. "Mr. Hollister, what brings you to the Parker place today?" Hollister dismounted with practiced elegance. "Concern for a neighbor, of course, and some legal matters that require attention." He turned to Zara. "Miss Parker, I've filed a formal complaint regarding water rights. Your new irrigation system diverts water that has historically flowed to my grazing lands downstream." "That's not possible," Liam interjected. "We've been careful to use only the water that naturally flows through the Parker property. The downstream flow is unaffected." Sheriff Trent produced an official-looking document. "Nevertheless, there's been a complaint filed. As sheriff, I'm obliged to investigate and potentially shut down the irrigation work until a judge can rule on the matter." "Which judge would that be?" Nathan asked mildly. "The one from Helena who stays at your hunting lodge when he's in the territory, Mr. Hollister?" A tense silence followed this accusation. Hollister's smile tightened. "The legal system may seem cumbersome, Prescott, but it exists for good reason, to protect established interests from newcomers with disruptive ideas." He returned his attention to Zara. "Miss Parker, this situation could become quite costly in terms of legal fees, or it could be resolved amicably with a simple transaction beneficial to both parties." Zara felt all eyes upon her. For a moment, weariness threatened to overwhelm her resolve. Then she felt Nathan's steady presence beside her, sensed the support of Liam and the others who had worked alongside them. "My father knew the law regarding water rights, Mr. Hollister," she replied firmly. "We're entitled to reasonable use of water flowing through our property, provided we don't substantially diminish what continues downstream." She gestured to the carefully constructed channel. "As you can see, we've been meticulous about maintaining proper flow." "Legal interpretations can be complex," Hollister countered smoothly, "and expensive to argue." "Then perhaps we should seek an impartial opinion," Nathan suggested. "The territorial governor is visiting Virginia City next week. I'm sure he'd be interested in hearing how the largest landowner in the valley is using questionable legal tactics to pressure a young woman out of her rightful inheritance." Hollister's confidence faltered momentarily. The governor has more important matters to attend to. "Perhaps," Nathan agreed. "Or perhaps he'd be interested in how certain influential citizens are attempting to consolidate control of water resources that rightfully belong to multiple property owners." This direct challenge hung in the air. Sheriff Trent shifted uncomfortably in his saddle, while Jensen's hand moved subtly toward his gun. Zara held her breath, sensing they had reached a dangerous tipping point. Hollister studied Nathan with new calculation in his eyes. You seem unusually well informed about territorial politics for a drifting cowboy, Prescott. I've learned that knowing the law benefits those who might otherwise be taken advantage of, Nathan replied evenly. After a tense moment, Hollister's posture relaxed into one of false conviviality. Well, perhaps we've been hasty. I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding without troubling the governor. He returned to his horse. Sheriff, let's put the complaint on hold while we review the water flow measurements more thoroughly. As the group prepared to depart, Hollister paused beside Nathan. You're playing a dangerous game, Prescott. I admire your strategy, but you should know I rarely lose. First time for everything, Nathan replied quietly. When they were alone again, Zara turned to Nathan with questioning eyes. How did you know about the governor and about the judge? Nathan's expression was guarded. I hear things. People talk in saloons, especially when they think no one important is listening. There's more to it than that, Zara pressed. You knew exactly what to say to make him back down. Who are you really, Nathan Prescott? For a long moment, he seemed to debate with himself. Finally, he sighed. I worked for the Territorial Marshal's office in Wyoming for a few years. Learned how things operate in these developing regions, who holds power, how it's wielded where the pressure points are. You're a lawman, Zara asked, surprised. Was Nathan corrected. I resigned my position after a disagreement with my superior about how justice should be applied to powerful interests. His expression darkened with memory. Let's just say I learned that badges don't always guarantee honesty. This revelation placed his capabilities in a new light. Is that why you're heading to Virginia City? Another law position? Nathan shook his head. No, just looking for a fresh start. He met her gaze directly, like many who come west. The connection between them deepened with this shared truth. They were both seeking to rebuild something that had been lost, to find purpose in a harsh but promising land. That evening, as they sat on the newly repaired porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains, Zara found the courage to ask the question that had been growing in her heart. Will you stay, Nathan? Not just until the irrigation is complete, but longer. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Nathan turned to her, his expression serious yet tender. I'd like to, he admitted softly. More than I've wanted anything in a long while. Zara's heart quickened. Then why do I sense a but coming? Because Hollister won't stop, Nathan replied, his voice tinged with regret. He'll find another angle, another pressure point, and my presence here makes you a target. He's the type of man who'll destroy what he can't possess. I'm already his target, Zara pointed out. At least with you here, I have a fighting chance. Nathan's hand found hers in the gathering twilight. You're stronger than you realize, Zara Parker, with or without me. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but I've discovered I prefer with to without. The admission hung between them, charged with meaning. Nathan's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. So have I, he murmured, slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Nathan leaned toward her. Zara met him halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that felt simultaneously like a beginning and a homecoming. His hand cradled her face with exquisite tenderness, as if she were something precious beyond measure. When they finally parted, Zara saw her own emotions reflected in Nathan's eyes: wonder, desire, and a growing certainty that transcended their brief acquaintance. I should warn you, Nathan said softly, that if we continue this, Hollister will use it against you somehow. He'll claim you've fallen under the influence of an outsider, that your decisions aren't your own. Let him, Zara replied with newfound conviction. I know my own mind and heart, and both are telling me that you belong here, Nathan Prescott, if you want to stay. His answer was another kiss, deeper than the first, sealing a promise between them that required no words. The following weeks brought a renewed sense of purpose to the Parker homestead. With the irrigation system complete, they turned to planting the western field with a diverse crop of vegetables and grain that would mature at different times, providing both sustenance and potential market goods. Word spread through the valley about the improvements, drawing occasional visitors curious to see for themselves. Some came with skepticism, but left impressed by what Nathan and Zara had accomplished together. Others arrived with offers of seeds, tools, or small gestures of support from those who had their own reasons to resist Hollister's expanding influence. Through it all, Hollister maintained an ominous silence. No more legal challenges were filed, no more visits from Sheriff Trent disrupted their work. This absence of direct confrontation, rather than providing relief, only heightened their vigilance. "He's planning something," Nathan observed one evening as they reviewed their progress. Men like Hollister don't simply accept defeat. What more can he do? Zara wondered. We've addressed the water rights issue. The property taxes are paid through autumn. The mortgage payment isn't due for another month, and we should have enough from the early harvest to cover it. Nathan's expression remained troubled. There are always leverage points. We just haven't identified what he's targeting next. Their answer came unexpectedly from Eliza Cooper, who arrived breathless one afternoon, having ridden hard from town. "Zara." She called, dismounting before her horse had fully stopped. "You need to know what's happening." Alarmed, Zara hurried to meet her friend, Nathan, close behind. "What is it? What's wrong?" Eliza caught her breath. "Hollister's men are in town, buying up outstanding debts, any bills or loans connected to the Parker name. They've already acquired your father's old tab at the Mercantile and the loan he took from Davis for farming equipment 2 years ago." Nathan's expression darkened. "He's consolidating control of your financial obligations." "But why?" Zara asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "To call them all due at once," Nathan explained grimly. "A common tactic to force foreclosure. Even if you could pay each debt individually as it comes due, facing them all simultaneously would be impossible." Eliza nodded. "Father heard Hollister's lawyer saying they plan to serve papers next week, demanding immediate payment of all outstanding debts." Zara felt the ground shift beneath her. "How much time do we have?" "A few days at most," Eliza replied. "Father's trying to warn others not to sell your father's debts to Hollister's men, but money talks, and Hollister is offering well above value." After Eliza departed, promising to return with any new information, Zara and Nathan assessed their precarious position. The total of the known debts, combined with the upcoming mortgage payment, far exceeded their available funds. "We could sell some of the livestock," Zara suggested without conviction, knowing it wouldn't be nearly enough. Nathan paced the cabin, his expression focused. "We need a different approach. Fighting Hollister on his terms with money is a losing battle." "What other terms are there?" "Information," Nathan replied, stopping suddenly. "Leverage of our own." Something in his tone made Zara study him more carefully. "What are you thinking?" "That men who build empires the way Hollister has rarely do so without cutting corners, without secrets they'd prefer to keep buried." Nathan's expression was resolute. "I need to go to Virginia City." "Virginia City? That's 2 days' ride each way. We don't have time. The Territorial Records Office is there," Nathan explained. "Land grants, water rights, mining claims. If Hollister has vulnerabilities, that's where we'll find evidence." Understanding dawned. "You think there are irregularities in his land acquisitions?" "I'd stake my life on it," Nathan confirmed. "Men like him believe rules exist for others, not for themselves." "And the territorial record keeping has been chaotic since the war, perfect conditions for manipulating documentation." The plan was risky. Nathan would need to leave immediately to have any chance of returning before Hollister's legal assault began. Zara would be alone, vulnerable to whatever interim pressure Hollister might apply. "I don't like leaving you unprotected," Nathan admitted as he prepared for the journey. "I'll stay with the Coopers until you return," Zara promised. "Liam won't let Hollister's men onto their property without a fight." Nathan cupped her face gently. "I'll ride as if the devil himself were chasing me. Just come back safely," Zara whispered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "That's all that matters." After Nathan's departure, Zara moved temporarily to the Cooper farm as planned. Eliza's parents welcomed her warmly, though concern shadowed their hospitality. "Hollister's gone too far this time," Liam declared over supper. "Using financial trickery to force people off their land. It's not right." "It's not just about Zara's property anymore," Mrs. Cooper added. "If he succeeds, what's to stop him from doing the same to any of us?" This sentiment was echoed by other neighbors who gathered at the Cooper farm the following evening. A half-dozen families, all with modest holdings that adjoined or stood between Hollister's extensive properties, shared similar stories of pressure tactics and veiled threats. "He offered to buy my east pasture last month," one farmer reported. "When I refused, my cattle mysteriously broke through a fence that had been solid for years. 3 animals were lost before we could round them up. The mercantile suddenly couldn't extend my usual credit," another added. "First time in 15 years." As they talked, a pattern emerged. Hollister was systematically isolating and applying pressure to smaller landholders throughout the valley, with the Parker homestead merely the most visible current target. "We need to stand together," Liam proposed. "Pool our resources, help each other with harvests and repairs, make it harder for him to pick us off one by one." The idea gained traction as the evening progressed. By the time the neighbors departed, a nascent alliance had formed an agreement to share labor, tools, and support against Hollister's encroachment. Zara felt a renewed hope in this collective defiance, though she worried about Nathan's dangerous mission. He had been gone 3 days now, and there was still no word. On the morning of the 4th day, Sheriff Trent arrived at the Cooper farm, accompanied by Jensen and Hollister's lawyer, a thin, precise man named Whitfield. "Miss Parker," the sheriff called from the yard, clearly uncomfortable with his role. "I have legal papers to serve regarding outstanding debts against the Parker estate." Liam stood firmly beside Zara as she went to meet them. "She'll receive them, Sheriff." "But I'm witnessing everything that happens here today." Whitfield stepped forward, producing a thick envelope. "Miss Parker, this document outlines debts totaling $342.78, now held by Mr. Hollister's business interests. Payment in full is required within 3 days, or foreclosure proceedings will commence against the Parker property." The amount was staggering, more than 3 times what Zara had managed to save. Her expression must have betrayed her dismay because Whitfield continued with rehearsed sympathy. "Mr. Hollister understands this may present difficulties. He authorizes me to offer an alternative: the immediate transfer of your land deed in exchange for full debt forgiveness and an additional cash payment of $100 for your relocation expenses." "That's robbery disguised as charity," Liam growled. "It's a legally sound business arrangement," Whitfield countered smoothly. "And given Miss Parker's limited options, quite generous." Zara accepted the papers with outward calm, though her hands trembled slightly. "I'll review these with my own legal advisor before responding," Jensen smirked. Didn't realize drifting cowboys had law degrees these days. Ignoring the taunt, Zara continued, "Please inform Mr. Hollister that I'll provide my answer within the specified time frame." After they departed, Zara studied the documents with growing despair. Every debt was meticulously documented, with her father's signature on each obligation. There were no obvious legal flaws to challenge, no extensions she could reasonably request. "We'll find a way," Liam assured her, though his voice lacked conviction. "The neighbors have pledged to help." But Zara knew that even their combined resources couldn't produce the required sum in 3 days. Without Nathan and whatever information he hoped to find, her options were rapidly dwindling. That night, as a spring storm rolled across the valley, Zara found herself unable to sleep, listening to the wind howl around the Cooper farmhouse. It reminded her of that first night with Nathan, when the blizzard had driven him to her door. So much had changed since then. The cabin restored, the irrigation system built, her heart open to possibilities she had never anticipated, and now it might all be lost. A soft knock at her bedroom door roused her from these grim thoughts. Eliza entered, her expression a mixture of excitement and caution. "There's someone here to see you," she whispered. He came in through the back way, avoiding the main road. Hope surged through Zara. "Nathan," Eliza nodded. "He's soaked to the bone and exhausted, but he insisted on speaking with you immediately." Zara hurried downstairs to find Nathan standing by the kitchen fire, his clothes dripping onto the stone hearth. His face was drawn with fatigue, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You're safe," he breathed, relief evident in his voice. "And you came back," she replied, rushing to embrace him despite his wet clothing. Liam appeared, carrying dry clothes and a blanket. "Better get warm before you catch your death, Prescott, then you can tell us what you found." Once Nathan had changed and consumed a hastily prepared meal, he produced a leather portfolio from his saddlebag, now protected in oilcloth. "It was worth the journey," he announced, spreading several documents on the table. "Hollister's empire is built on sand." The papers revealed a pattern of land acquisitions, with troubling irregularities claims filed on behalf of non-existent relatives, boundary adjustments approved without proper surveys, water rights transferred through questionable power of attorney documents. "Most damning of all," Nathan explained, pointing to a particular record, "is this land grant from 1863. It encompasses nearly a third of Hollister's current holdings, including the creek that feeds most of the valley. But look at the signature of the territorial administrator." Liam examined it closely. "Thomas Whitley, what of it?" "Whitley died in 1862, Nathan replied with grim satisfaction. "I confirmed it in the territorial death records. This grant was approved by a dead man nearly a year after his passing." The implications were staggering. If the foundational grant was fraudulent, all subsequent transfers and expansions based on that property could be called into question. This could unravel his entire operation, Liam breathed. "Or at least force him to legitimate negotiation," Nathan agreed. The territorial governor would take a very dim view of such fraud, especially given the recent federal focus on land grant abuses. Zara studied the documents, hope battling with caution. "Will it be enough to stop the foreclosure?" "It should give us leverage," Nathan replied. "But we need to act quickly." "When is the deadline?" 2 days from now," Zara said. "They served papers this morning." Nathan's expression hardened. "Then we present this evidence to Hollister tomorrow, not through intermediaries directly to him." The plan they formed that night was bold. Rather than waiting for Hollister to come to them, they would take the fight to his doorstep, presenting their evidence and demands at his ranch headquarters where he couldn't easily dismiss them. "We'll need witnesses," Liam pointed out. "People Hollister can't intimidate or buy off." "The circuit judge arrives in Coloma tomorrow," Eliza remembered. "He's not from Hollister's pocket. He was appointed by the governor last fall." "Perfect," Nathan agreed. "We'll invite him to accompany us, and perhaps Reverend Simmons as well. Hollister attends his church when it suits him. He won't want to show his worst face before his pastor." By morning, their strategy was set. Liam rode to town to speak with the judge and reverend, while Zara and Nathan prepared their presentation of the evidence. They would offer Hollister a choice: withdraw all claims against the Parker property and recognize the independence of the smaller farms in the valley, or face exposure of his fraudulent land acquisitions to territorial authorities. "He'll hate being cornered," Nathan warned as they organized the documents. "Men like Hollister are most dangerous when they feel trapped." "Which is exactly how he's made me feel these past months," Zara observed with grim satisfaction. "It's time he experienced it himself." That afternoon, an unlikely procession made its way toward Hollister's grand ranch house, Zara and Nathan riding side by side, followed by Liam, Judge Carlton, Reverend Simmons, and 3 other neighboring farmers whose lands had been targeted by Hollister's expansion efforts. They were met at the gate by Jensen, who attempted to turn them away until Judge Carlton intervened. "This is official judicial business, Mr. Jensen. I suggest you inform your employer of our arrival immediately." Hollister received them in his opulent study, his composure only slightly ruffled by the unexpected delegation. He greeted Judge Carlton with exaggerated cordiality while barely acknowledging the others. "To what do I owe this unusual gathering?" he inquired, offering seats only to the judge and Reverend. Nathan remained standing, his posture relaxed but alert. "We've come about the Parker property, Mr. Hollister, and about certain irregularities in your land holdings that have recently come to light." Hollister's smile tightened. "I wasn't aware that drifting ranch hands had expertise in property law, Prescott. Former Deputy U.S. Marshal Prescott has considerable expertise in land fraud cases," Judge Carlton corrected mildly. "I've reviewed his findings and find them concerning enough to merit this conversation." The revelation of Nathan's former position visibly startled Hollister, though he recovered quickly. "Marshal, how interesting, and yet you've been presenting yourself as a simple cowboy these past months." "I never claimed any particular occupation," Nathan replied evenly. "Though I've found honest work preferable to dishonest wealth." The implied accusation hung in the air. Hollister's gaze hardened as it shifted to the portfolio Nathan now placed on the desk between them. "What exactly are you suggesting, Prescott?" "Not suggesting. Demonstrating." Nathan opened the folder, revealing the copied records. "The Whitley land grant of 1863, the cornerstone of your northern holdings, was approved and signed a full year after Thomas Whitley's death, a fact easily verified in territorial records." For the first time, Hollister's confident facade cracked. His eyes darted to Judge Carlton, assessing the judicial reaction to this revelation. "Administrative errors in record-keeping were common in those chaotic years," he offered smoothly. "I purchased those lands in good faith from the original grantees, who, according to witness depositions I've gathered, were your own employees using assumed names," Nathan countered. "A pattern that repeats with remarkable consistency throughout your acquisitions." Reverend Simmons leaned forward, his expression troubled. "Vincent, if these allegations have substance—" "They're preposterous," Hollister snapped, though a flush had risen to his face. "Ancient history being twisted by people with grudges and ambitions of their own." Judge Carlton examined the documents carefully. "Preposterous or not, they warrant investigation. Land fraud is a federal offense, Mr. Hollister, one that carries significant penalties." The implied threat hung in the air. Hollister's gaze swept across the assembled group, calculation evident in his expression. "What exactly do you want?" he finally asked, addressing Nathan directly. "Recognition of legitimate property boundaries," Nathan replied. "Beginning with the withdrawal of all claims against the Parker homestead and the cancellation of the debts you've acquired." "Absurd," Hollister scoffed. "Those are legal financial obligations." "Which will be meaningless when your land holdings are under federal investigation," Zara interjected, finding her voice. "We're not asking for charity, Mr. Hollister, just the chance to work our lands without your interference." Liam stepped forward. "This isn't just about the Parker place. It's about all our farms. We're proposing a mutual non-interference pact. You respect our boundaries, we respect yours." Hollister's gaze shifted between them, measuring the determination in each face. "And if I refuse this generous offer?" "Then these documents go to the territorial governor and the federal land office," Nathan stated simply, "along with sworn statements from everyone present today." A tense silence followed. Hollister stood abruptly and moved to the window, staring out at his vast ranch and empire built through determination, cunning, and they now knew fraud. "I could fight these accusations," he said finally. "Tie them up in courts for years." "You could," Judge Carlton agreed. "At considerable expense and public scrutiny. The question is whether it's worth the cost to your reputation and standing in the community." Reverend Simmons added gently, There is grace in recognizing when a path has led too far from righteousness, Vincent. And wisdom in changing course before divine judgment renders its verdict. This appeal to Hollister's spiritual concerns, however superficial they might be, seemed to reach him in ways the legal threats had not. His shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. "I will need time to consider these matters with my legal advisors," he said carefully. "The debt collection deadline is tomorrow," Zara reminded him. "We require your decision by then." Hollister turned back to face them, his expression once again composed. "You'll have it by noon." "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to." As they rode away from Hollister's ranch, the atmosphere among the group was cautiously optimistic. Judge Carlton had retained copies of the key documents as insurance against any attempt by Hollister to silence their claims. "He'll concede," the judge predicted. "He's too shrewd to risk his entire operation over one small farm, no matter how stubbornly he's pursued it." "I wouldn't underestimate his pride," Nathan cautioned, "or his capacity for retaliation." This warning proved prescient when they returned to the Cooper farm to find Sheriff Trent waiting for them, his expression uncomfortable but determined. "Nathan Prescott," he announced formally. "I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of impersonating a federal officer." "That's ridiculous," Zara protested. "He never claimed to be a current marshal." "Complaint says otherwise," Trent replied, avoiding her gaze. "Signed by 3 witnesses who claim he presented himself as an active U.S. Marshal to obtain territorial documents under false pretenses." Nathan's expression remained calm. "Hollister works quickly." He turned to Judge Carlton. "Your Honor, I trust you'll ensure this matter receives proper judicial review." "You can count on it," the judge assured him. "Sheriff, I'll accompany you and Mr. Prescott to town. I have some questions about the procedural aspects of this arrest." As Nathan prepared to leave with the sheriff, he pulled Zara aside briefly. "Don't worry. This is just Hollister's attempt to remove me from the equation before tomorrow's deadline. The judge won't let it stand." "Be careful," Zara whispered, fighting back tears of frustration and fear. "Hollister is desperate now." Nathan touched her cheek gently. "So are we, but we have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth," Nathan replied simply, "and each other." After Nathan's departure with the sheriff and judge, Zara found herself surrounded by supporters: the Coopers, the neighboring farmers, Reverend Simmons, who had chosen to remain with them rather than return to town. Their presence provided comfort, but the night stretched endlessly as she worried about Nathan's safety in a jail controlled by Hollister's allies. Morning brought no word from town. As noon approached, Hollister's deadline for a decision tension mounted at the Cooper farm. Would Hollister honor their confrontation with a response, or would he simply proceed with the foreclosure now that Nathan was temporarily neutralized? The answer came with the sound of approaching horses. Expecting Hollister or his representatives, they were surprised to see Judge Carlton riding alongside a free Nathan, with Sheriff Trent following at a respectful distance. Zara rushed to meet them, embracing Nathan with relief evident in every line of her body. "You're released. What happened?" "Judge Carlton happened," Nathan explained with a grateful nod toward the jurist. "He reviewed the witness statements and found them suspiciously identical, right down to the misspelling of Marshall as Marshall in each document. Clearly coached testimony," the judge added dryly. "I've seen enough fraudulent affidavits in my career to recognize the pattern. The charges have been dismissed." Sheriff Trent looked distinctly uncomfortable. "For what it's worth, I was following orders. Nothing personal against you, Prescott." "I understand the position you're in, Sheriff," Nathan replied without rancor, "but a man makes choices about whose orders he follows." This pointed observation hung in the air as the sheriff shifted in his saddle. "Well, I've got another set of orders now. Mr. Hollister sent this for Miss Parker." He extended an envelope. "Said it contains his response to yesterday's discussion." With trembling fingers, Zara opened the envelope. Inside was a simple document, a release of all claims against the Parker estate, signed by Vincent Hollister and witnessed by his lawyer. "He's conceding," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "Not entirely," Sheriff Trent corrected. "He wanted me to tell you that while he's withdrawing his claims against the Parker property specifically, he maintains that his other land holdings are legitimate. He expects that to be the end of any investigations into his affairs." Judge Carlton harumphed. "He's offering a compromise. Your homestead in exchange for silence about his broader activities." "Is that acceptable?" Zara asked, looking between Nathan and the judge. Nathan considered carefully. "It's a start. We've established boundaries he can't cross, that's the important part. The other issues can be addressed over time, through proper legal channels." Judge Carlton nodded in agreement. "I'll be monitoring property disputes in this territory more closely from now on. Mr. Hollister is on notice that his methods are under scrutiny." Relief swept through Zara like a physical force. Her home was secure. The immediate threat had passed, and Nathan was safely returned to her side. The celebration that followed at the Cooper farm brought together all who had stood with them against Hollister's pressure. Food appeared from multiple kitchens, music from improvised instruments, and a sense of community victory that transcended the specific triumph of the Parker homestead. As evening approached, Nathan drew Zara away from the festivities, leading her to the quiet of the Cooper's garden where spring blossoms scented the air. "We should talk about what happens next," he said, his expression serious yet tender. Zara felt a flutter of uncertainty. "You mean with Hollister? Do you think he'll honor the agreement?" "He will for now," Nathan assured her. "He's a businessman above all, he knows when to cut his losses, but I was speaking more about us." "Oh," Zara suddenly found it difficult to meet his gaze. "I thought perhaps, with your name cleared, you might still want to continue to Virginia City." Nathan tilted her chin up gently, ensuring she saw the certainty in his eyes. "Virginia City was never a destination, Zara, just a direction, somewhere to go when I had nowhere else that mattered." Hope blossomed in her chest. "And now I've found somewhere that matters," he replied simply. "Someone who matters. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay. Help make the Parker homestead everything your parents dreamed it could be." Zara searched his face, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You want to stay, permanently?" "More than that," Nathan said, taking her hands in his. "I want to build a life here, with you, if that's what you want too." The realization of what he was offering, not just assistance with the farm, but partnership, commitment, a shared future, brought tears to Zara's eyes. "It is," she whispered. "More than anything." Nathan's smile illuminated his entire face. He drew her close, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke of devotion beyond passion. "Then it's settled," he murmured against her lips. "No more drifting for me, I've found my home." The summer of 1876 brought unprecedented prosperity to the Parker homestead. The irrigation system proved even more effective than anticipated, producing bountiful crops that commanded premium prices at the Coloma market. With the threat from Hollister neutralized, Zara and Nathan were free to focus on improvements and expansion. Their partnership flourished both personally and practically. Nathan's strength and practical knowledge complemented Zara's determination and intimate understanding of the land. Together, they achieved more than either could have accomplished alone. By midsummer, their relationship had deepened to the point where pretense of separate sleeping arrangements seemed unnecessary. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance against the darkening sky, Nathan took Zara's hand and kissed it gently. "I've been thinking," he began, uncharacteristic hesitancy in his voice, "about making things official between us." Zara's heart quickened. "Official, proper," Nathan clarified, "recognized by community and law alike." He turned to face her fully. "Zara Parker, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Though she had hoped for this moment, the reality of it still took her breath away. "Yes," she managed, tears of joy threatening. "Yes, Nathan Prescott, I will marry you." Their wedding in early September was a community celebration, hosted on the Parker homestead itself. The neighbors who had stood with them against Hollister gathered to witness their union, bringing gifts both practical and sentimental to mark the occasion. Reverend Simmons performed the ceremony beneath an arch of wildflowers that Eliza and other local women had constructed. Judge Carlton attended as guest of honor, having become an unexpected ally in their struggle and subsequent rebuilding. Even Sheriff Trent made an appearance, somewhat awkwardly offering congratulations and a hand-carved set of kitchen spoons as a wedding gift. His relationship with Hollister had cooled noticeably since the confrontation, suggesting a gradual realignment of Valley power dynamics. Hollister himself remained conspicuously absent, though rumors suggested he had turned his expansion efforts toward the Northern Territories, away from the now united farming community of Coloma. As autumn painted the surrounding mountains with gold and crimson, Nathan and Zara settled into married life with a contentment neither had dared imagine months earlier. The cabin, once a place of lonely struggle for Zara, now radiated warmth and shared purpose. One crisp October evening, as wind whispered through the strengthened cabin walls, Nathan found Zara standing on the porch, her expression pensive as she gazed toward the small fenced area on the ridge where her parents lay buried. "Are you all right?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Zara leaned into his embrace, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Just thinking about how much has changed, how close I came to losing everything they worked for. And now it feels like we're building something even beyond what they imagined," she replied softly. "Something ours, growing from what they started." Nathan rested his chin atop her head. "They'd be proud of you, Zara, of your courage and determination." "They would have loved you," she said with certainty. "Especially my father. He always said the measure of a man was in his willingness to work hard and stand firm for what's right." "High praise," Nathan murmured, clearly touched by the thought. They stood in comfortable silence as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of approaching winter in its bite. "We should go in," Nathan suggested eventually. "It's getting cold." Zara turned in his arms, a smile playing at her lips. "The wind howled through our cabin walls once before, and a certain cowboy told me I'd rest against him that night." She traced the line of his jaw tenderly. "I believe I'll take him up on that offer again tonight." Nathan's answering smile held all the warmth of home and hearth. "Tonight and every night, Mrs. Prescott. That's a promise I intend to keep." As they returned to the glowing warmth of their cabin, shutting out the gathering wind, Zara reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. A storm, a stranger at her door, a struggle that had seemed impossible to win, all converging to create this unexpected happiness. The winter of 1876-1877 proved less harsh than its predecessor, though still challenging by any standard. The improvements Nathan had made to the cabin kept the worst of the cold at bay, and their carefully stored harvest ensured they had ample provisions to last until spring. During the long winter evenings, they planned for the future, expanding the irrigation system, adding a proper barn, perhaps eventually building a larger home as their family grew. These conversations, filled with shared hopes and practical considerations, cemented their partnership in ways as meaningful as their marriage vows. Spring arrived with renewed promise. The irrigation channels, after surviving their first winter intact, required only minor repairs before the planting season. Word of their successful system had spread beyond the immediate valley, bringing occasional visitors seeking advice for their own properties. "You should charge consultation fees," Zara suggested one evening after Nathan had spent hours explaining water management techniques to a farmer from the next county. Nathan laughed. "Knowledge ought to be shared freely. Besides, the more successful farms in the region, the more stable the community." This philosophy of mutual support rather than competition had become the foundation of their approach to neighboring. The informal alliance formed during their confrontation with Hollister had evolved into regular gatherings where farmers exchanged labor, equipment, and expertise. By midsummer, the Parker Prescott homestead had become something of a community hub, a place where neighbors gathered to discuss common concerns, celebrate successes, and support each other through difficulties. The isolation that had defined Zara's first months alone was now a distant memory. It was during one such gathering, as neighboring families shared a communal harvest celebration, that Zara pulled Nathan aside, her expression a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I have news," she said quietly, leading him away from the festivities to the privacy of their porch. Something in her tone made Nathan study her face intently. "Good news, I hope, the best," Zara confirmed, a radiant smile blooming. "Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday when I was in town. We're going to have a child, Nathan, come spring." For a moment, Nathan stood perfectly still, processing her words. Then his face transformed with a joy so pure it brought tears to Zara's eyes. "A child," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Our child." He gathered her gently in his arms as if she had suddenly become infinitely precious and fragile. "Are you well? Do you need anything? Should you be resting instead of hosting these people?" Zara laughed at his sudden barrage of concerns. "I'm perfectly fine." Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, most while working fields and tending homes far more demanding than ours. "Not my woman," Nathan insisted, though his expression softened with understanding. "But I'll try not to fuss too much." "I doubt you'll succeed at that," Zara teased, knowing his protective instincts too well. As the months passed and Zara's condition became visible, Nathan indeed struggled to moderate his protectiveness. He took on additional tasks without being asked, insisted on hiring seasonal help earlier than planned for the spring planting, and spent evenings crafting a beautifully detailed cradle from locally harvested pine. The community embraced the coming arrival with traditional frontier practicality and warmth. Women from neighboring farms shared advice and hand-me-down baby clothing, while their husbands helped Nathan construct an addition to the cabin, a proper nursery with a large window to catch the morning light. Even in town, where Zara had once felt like an outsider after her father's death, there was a newfound acceptance. The mercantile owner extended generous credit, the doctor promised to attend the birth regardless of weather conditions, and the miller's wife organized a baby welcome, gathering with gifts of soft blankets and practical necessities. As winter turned to spring, the valley stirred with new life calves in the pastures, early flowers pushing through the last patches of snow, and the Parker Prescott homestead preparing for its newest member. The baby, a son they named James Liam Prescott, arrived on a perfect April morning, attended by Dr. Wilson and two neighboring women with midwifery experience. Nathan, pale with worry but steady in his support, remained at Zara's side throughout the difficult but ultimately triumphant hours of labor. When he finally held his son, Nathan's weathered face reflected a vulnerability Zara had never witnessed before. "He's perfect," he whispered, gazing in wonder at the tiny features. "How did we create something so perfect with love?" Zara replied simply, exhausted but radiant. "The same way we rebuilt this homestead, one day at a time with patience and hope." Little James thrived in the loving environment of the homestead. Nathan proved an attentive father, often carrying the infant in a sling across his chest while conducting necessary outdoor work, pointing out animals and plants with the same serious tone he might use to explain irrigation techniques to visiting farmers. By his first birthday, James was toddling determinedly across the cabin floor, his curiosity and energy seemingly boundless. His presence brought a new dimension to the homestead, a sense of continuity and future that transcended even Nathan and Zara's most hopeful plans. The spring of 1878 brought an unexpected visitor to the Parker Prescott home. Sheriff Trent, now notably independent from Hollister's influence, arrived one afternoon with news that rippled through the community. "Vincent Hollister's selling his holdings," he announced without preamble. "Moving his operation to Wyoming territory. Seems he's had enough of Montana." Nathan and Zara exchanged glances of surprise. "What prompted this decision?" Nathan asked. The sheriff shrugged. "Official story is he's seeking better grazing land. Unofficially, the territorial governor's been asking uncomfortable questions about certain land grants, questions that sound remarkably similar to those you raised 2 years ago." "Judge Carlton," Zara guessed. "He must have pursued the matter despite our agreement with Hollister." "The judge believes in proper legal procedure," Sheriff Trent confirmed, "and in consequences for past actions, regardless of current circumstances." After the sheriff departed, Nathan and Zara discussed this unexpected development while watching James play in the yard, now securely fenced to contain his adventurous spirit. "Does it feel like victory?" Zara wondered. Hollister leaving the valley, Nathan considered this. "Not victory exactly. More like confirmation that standing our ground was right, that justice eventually finds its way, however slowly." "I wonder what will happen to his land," Zara mused. "It's nearly half the valley." This question was answered in the coming months as Hollister's vast holdings were divided and sold in smaller parcels, many to local families who had previously been unable to acquire land of their own. The valley experienced a renaissance of sorts, new farms established, fresh ideas implemented, the community expanding with diverse skills and perspectives. Through it all, the Parker Prescott homestead remained a cornerstone of the community, a testament to resilience, innovation, and the power of determined partnership. Their irrigation system became a model studied by agricultural specialists from as far away as the state capital, while their cooperative approach to neighboring influenced the development of the entire region. 5 years after that fateful winter storm that had brought Nathan to Zara's door, the landscape of their lives had transformed completely. The struggling homestead had become a prosperous farm. The isolated woman fighting to honor her parents' dream had become the heart of a thriving community. And the drifting former lawman had found his true purpose in building a legacy greater than he had ever imagined possible. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Nathan surprised Zara with a small wooden box, handcrafted and polished to a warm glow. "What's this?" she asked, opening it to find a delicate silver locket inside. "Open it," he encouraged softly. Within the locket was a miniature sketch of the Parker Prescott cabin as it now stood, with 3 small figures on the porch representing their family. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed. "But what's the occasion?" "5 years ago today, a storm brought me to your door," Nathan reminded her, helping her fasten the locket around her neck. "The best wrong turn I ever took." Zara touched the locket gently. "You never did tell me where you were originally heading that night." Nathan smiled. "Nowhere important, just away from the past toward some undefined future." He drew her close. "Instead, I found exactly where I belonged." As if on cue, 3-year-old James burst into the room, followed by his 1-year-old sister, Sarah Elizabeth, crawling determinedly behind her brother. "Papa, Mama, look what I found," James exclaimed, proudly displaying a perfectly formed pine cone. Nathan lifted his son, examining the treasure with appropriate seriousness. "That's a fine specimen, James, perfect for our collection." Zara gathered Sarah into her arms, the little girl's auburn curls so like her father's darker hair catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Zara sat on their porch as had become their custom, watching the stars emerge above the peaceful valley. The wind had risen with nightfall, rustling through the trees and across the flourishing fields, no longer a threatening howl, but a familiar voice in the landscape of their shared life. You ever think about how differently things might have turned out? Zara asked, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. If that storm hadn't driven you to my door that night, Nathan's arm tightened around her. Sometimes. But then I remember something my father told me before gold fever took him west. He said some people spend their lives searching for purpose, while others recognize it the moment it appears before them. He kissed her temple gently. I knew the moment I saw you standing in that doorway, shotgun in hand, that something important had just begun. Zara smiled at the memory. I was terrified, alone with a failing farm and a stranger at my door. And now? Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer. Zara gazed across their property, the thriving fields, the solid barn, the cabin that had weathered so many storms, both literal and figurative. She thought of their children sleeping peacefully inside, of the community that had formed around their stand against intimidation, of the love that had grown from desperate circumstances to become the foundation of everything they now shared. Now I'm home, she replied simply. Truly home. The wind continued its gentle song around their cabin walls as Nathan and Zara remained on the porch, content in each other's presence, and in the life they had built together, a life neither had imagined on that stormy night, when a lost cowboy had promised a frightened woman she would rest against him until morning. That promise, like so many others between them, had been kept, and would continue to be through all the seasons yet to come.